It's fantastic to have you for our second leadership forum this year. And I have with me today Meg Gallagher. And it's really wonderful to have Meg and nice to see so many of you actually coming on. The session will be recorded as well, and it will be going out into the Dropbox. So that if you want to listen to it again, or if you'd like to share it with anyone, that you can do so, because I know it will be worth sharing. Now, also, I just mentioned, and in case you didn't hear, please put your name in the chat. I'll be giving away a copy of my new book that's going to be published in June. And if you put your name in the chat, you may be lucky enough to win one of the first off the press, and it will actually be a signed copy. How's that? So I'd like to officially welcome Meg here today. And I met Meg last year when I started connecting with Spectrum Education. And I have to say, I've had some amazing discussions with Meg, and every time I connect, it's resulted in some pure gems. And I know that today is not going to be any exception. That's what she delivers all the time. So welcome, Meg.
Kia ora, thank you, Jenny, and right back at you.
Thank you. So Meg did her thesis on exploring resilience and wellbeing with mid-career primary teachers in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and she did a strengths-based approach. And one of the things that she talks about is that happy, healthy teachers tend to have happier, healthy classrooms where learners do better socially, emotionally, and academically. And happy, healthy leaders create the environment for their staff to thrive. And I think that last statement is particularly relevant for us as leaders. Like whether we're in a classroom and we're leading the children in our class, we are leaders. And so creating that environment for people to thrive. And many of the people here are SENCO, they're LSC, they're RTLBs. And it's a big part of our role to ensure that we support our staff in their environment to thrive. So I don't mind admitting, actually, I have actually struggled more this year with my work-life balance than I have any other year. And it's been a topic of discussion that I've raised quite a bit. So, Meg, the first question I want to actually ask you is, what is the problem with work-life balance?
Yeah, great question. I'd like to sort of go backwards to go forwards, if that's okay. So one of the things is to get really clear on what well-being means, because we hear the word being bandied about, but often, as with all things with language, these words are loaded, and we all come with our own interpretations and our own expectations of what that word actually means. So in my research, I defined it as teacher well-being being when a teacher or an educator is flourishing in their workplace and as an individual and in relationships with others through ensuring their spiritual, mental, emotional, physical and social needs are being met. Now, that might be different to other people's definitions. It certainly was different to some of the other ones that I read. But one of the pivotal things in there was around understanding what our needs are and then making sure they get met. And work-life balance, so by the way, please don't think of me as the poster child for well-being, because I'm not. I'd love to be, but I'm not. I am a work in progress. I'm certainly a lot better than what I was 20 years ago, where I used to go, I was stuck in a burnout loop, and it was very unpleasant. So I'm not there, but I'm not the pinnacle or poster child yet either. And so for me, the problem with work-life balance is that if we were to balance out everything that people tell us we should do, we would never, ever rest because we'd be so busy. We'd be busy doing our work and engaging with our colleagues and being fabulous in our work and focused and centered at all times. And then to be involved in mindful activity that is good for our bodies, and then to be eating very well and to be drinking the required amount of water and to be, again, building our social relationships and then having meaningful hobbies that fill our lives. And the list goes on and on and on. And and then it becomes a burden, and it actually robs us of the joy. As an example, years ago when I worked in a different organisation, I had my manager gave me KPIs, and my last KPI was always to have a good work-life balance. Now, what he called a good work-life balance and what I called a good work-life balance were quite different things, because I had I worked from home back in the days when that was new. So before COVID gave us Zoom and everything else. And so I was working from home and I was working flexi time. And that had been the agreement that I'd had with the organisation, which meant that I could go to play centre with my wee boy, that when he was sleeping, I could work, that when my husband was home, I might work in the evenings. And so I worked a very flexible schedule. Now, that was disturbing for my new manager, who didn't quite understand how I worked, and he saw that as being a problem. And so every time we came to my quarterly review, we'd get to that last KPI with work-life balance, and there would be a heavy sigh from me, a heavy sigh from him, and we'd both leave feeling disappointed. Until such point as I actually said to him, look, can we get rid of that last KPI? Because it doesn't mean anything, and what you're doing is judging me, or I feel that I'm being judged for who I am and how I prefer to work. And so then I'm trying to change to fit into a mold that doesn't work for me, and it's actually causing me more stress and distress. So we got rid of that, and that improved our KPI meetings. Now, I love what Steve Francis says. He doesn't talk about work-life balance. He talks about work-life satisfaction. And this is gold. This is finding that sense of satisfaction and contentment within our lives. And that work is not the thing over there that stops us from having a life. Work is part of our lives. You're not going to be doing something for 8 hours a day and then going, and then I get my life. How miserable is that? So work is part of our lives, and what we want to do is to have as much satisfaction as possible with how our day rolls out. Now, some days that might be with connecting with friends. Other days that might be going to bed early. Some days that might be sitting up late watching Netflix, because actually that's where you're at. Whatever it is, but that you are satisfied in totality with what is going on. And I think that's a really important point.
It sure is. And actually, when we spoke last night, you mentioned that, and to me, that was one of the gems. I always talk about work-life balance, and as soon as she said it, it actually hit home to me. It's not about balance, it's actually about satisfaction. And Meg, yes, last night she actually said to me, I actually derive a lot of satisfaction from doing professional reading. I actually derive a lot of satisfaction from my work, and I'm really passionate about it. And I keep thinking that I have to create this work-life balance, and I should. But in actual fact, when work is flowing and, there's not too much of it, I love it and I really enjoy it. And so that change to me from changing from work-life balance to work-life satisfaction was just a key thing. The other thing that actually came up for me in my discussions recently with Meg, I actually joined this Facebook group, and the Facebook group was to add a new habit per month. I actually thought this is going to be easy, and what's important to me and what am I going to add? Do you know, it's been the hardest thing. We're actually up to April and I haven't actually succeeded at all. And it was creating a level of stress for me. And I said to Meg last night, I've actually decided to reframe my goals. And the way that I've actually decided to reframe them is that I'm actually doing 3 things a day that enhance my well-being. Now, the goal for this month was to have a smoothie every day. But my base diet is smoothies and salads. Then I have other things, but as long as I've had my smoothie and salad, that's fine. To have exercise. Now, one day it might be really good sleep. Another day, it might be doing some reading for pleasure. It might be, there can be 10 different things that it actually might be. And I figure that if I do 3 things every day that are supporting my well-being, that's 21 a week. That's actually going to bring good work-life balance. So thank you, Meg, for reframing my the way I think about things and covering that off. So why should we be concerned then about teacher well-being, do you think?
Well, because for the simple reason that happy, healthy teachers tend to have happier, healthier classrooms where our kids do better socially, academically, and emotionally. So basically, if I were in charge of the budget, and I'm not, but my first dollar would be spent on teacher wellbeing if I wanted to improve outcomes for our kids, because that has a direct impact in the school setting. There's certainly a whole plethora of social ills that would need to be addressed as well to create an equitable system. But at the moment, that is one small place where we could actually make a big, big difference. And we know ourselves, when we're feeling low and drained and we actually don't have enough to give, we're not pleasant people to be around. And quite frankly, if you're not a pleasant person to be around, I really don't want to learn from you, because I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I may even feel unsafe. I remember Celia Lashley talking to us a number of years ago at a conference. And I won't use the exact turn of phrase she did, but she said that teachers, we are in the giving profession. And so we give and we give and we give. And this is all the educators. This is your SENCOs, your LSCs, your teacher aides, your school leaders. We're all giving. And we give and we give and we give. But if we don't give back to ourselves, we run the risk of bleeding out. And when we bleed out, we have nothing left to give. And then she said very strongly, and if we're in that space, we need to get out because we're going to do damage. She didn't use the word get out, but she was a bit more forceful.
I can imagine actually what she said.
Yeah. And what she was doing was making a really strong point. And if you think about, if you guys know Celia Lashley, what the saddest thing for me is at the time when she was speaking to us, her body was being ravaged with a disease that she was unaware of because she was moving so fast and trying so hard to be all things for all people, and she wasn't listening to herself or caring for herself in her desperate attempt to try and change the world. And so for us, it's absolutely vital that we fill our own cups. So then we have got the energy to be able to share with those learners, and particularly those learners who need more from us. We've got to have the energy to be able to do that and to be able to sustain those relationships.
Right. You started to talk about it needs to be a priority, and you talked about leadership in schools. There's so many situations though, and it'd be great for people to chip in, and feel free to unmute yourself and chip in. And also put any questions that you want in the chat or throughout the session. But so often we actually don't have well-being at the forefront of our work in schools. Yeah, why do you think that is? And this question wasn't on the list, by the way. I'm really putting her on the spot here. But why do you think it is that it's not like we're very good at grinding teachers down and burning people out? Yeah, and what do we have to do as a profession to actually change that?
We have to learn how to say no, I think, as a profession. I think that like I focused on mid-career teachers because they are, I believe, they are the population that we need to support so that they can become our school leaders, because they have this wealth of experience and we don't want to lose them to burnout and fatigue and being washed out and not wanting to do it anymore. And so that's why I focused on mid-career teachers. As I have aged, and now I'm in that beautiful zone where menopause is happening, all sorts of fun party quirks that I didn't even know existed are happening, I've come to realise that we were sold a lie. So to those of us who were children of the 80s, give me a big shout out, yay, aha, take on me. we were told, and particularly women, were told that we can do anything. And that's true. We are more than capable of doing anything. But somewhere in there that got misinterpreted to we can do everything.
Mm.
And I think that we have gone into this zone of trying to be all things to all people. And there's a whole lot of stuff around womanhood and around the fact that in caring professions there are significantly more women, particularly in the lower areas in education. As we go younger, there's more women. And as carers, we just want to help everybody. We just want to make the world a better place. So it all comes from a really beautiful, beautiful place. But what we're doing is we're burning ourselves out. And we have a system that, and this is a little bit political, but basically our system is hemorrhaging. And quite frankly, if I could, I'd burn the whole thing to the ground and start again, because it's underserving our kids, too many of our kids. So what we've been doing is we've been holding up the system. Every time we're asked to do something, us teachers sit there and go, yeah, sure, we'll make it work. Yeah, no worries. We'll try and make it work. We'll switch things around and we'll squidge them in here and there and we'll make it work. Which is admirable, incredibly admirable, but it's doing us damage. And we need to get really, really strong on what is our purpose in schools and doing the best that we can for the kids that we've got in front of us. And that might be saying no to policy and procedure that's been handed down from above that does not make sense and underserves our kids.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, because I had a conversation with the principal this morning that I'm at the school at today, and I was actually talking about how last year I was sitting, it was actually at a school I was presenting at, but we had resource tables, and I was actually sitting next to the table that was responsible for water safety. And I reflected on how when I did teacher training so many years ago, we were expected to teach swimming, but we had school pools, and that was actually part of the curriculum. Listening to them talk, we are now responsible for water safety, keeping children safe at the beach, keeping children safe in rivers, and doing the teaching around that, and their job was to provide the resources. At the same conference, there was somebody there talking about the environment, and apparently it's teachers' job to educate the next generation about the environmental changes, and to make sure that they're responsible citizens to achieve that. Now, I don't recall any of these things that we got actually asked or put our hands up to do them. And I'm not for one moment saying that those things actually aren't important. But when you speak to overseas teachers, one of the things that they actually say is that teachers in New Zealand are expected to do so much. Everything falls under the umbrella of teaching. And so much like our core business, like literacy, numeracy, and the core curriculum, everything's getting squeezed. And that was what Meg was saying. And I wonder how big and how much wider we actually have to look at these things, because I think the expectation is from compared to what overseas teachers are expected, maybe there's a whole systemic problem. And so, Meg, I'd have to say I probably agree with you that we need to burn the thing to the ground and rebuild. Did we really say that? I don't mean that literally. There's some great things that we do in education and some great things happening. But there are certain things that we're not serving. We've got so many students, and all teachers are now saying that they've got between 40 and 50% of their children whose needs aren't being met by the current curriculum. So we wouldn't want to keep all aspects of a system that was like that, and we'd want to look at change for the better. Yeah.
And this is about systemic. So this is about teachers doing a bloody good job.
It is.
Our teachers in our schools are doing such a phenomenal
Absolutely.
job with minimal resources, with minimal support, with maximum criticism from all corners.
Yeah.
The fact that we turn up and we keep doing what we're doing is incredible, but someone, we've got to start saying no.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So who then is responsible for teacher wellbeing, do you think?
We all are.
Right. Yeah.
We are, you know, like I remember actually saying at a course one day, it was a bit controversial, and one person actually walked out of it when I said this. But I said, stop asking for your leadership and your the system and everybody else to be responsible for your well-being. You have to step up and own it for yourself.
Right.
And you have to be responsible for your own well-being. And this person got up and left. Didn't like what I'd said. But it does start first with us.
It does.
Because nobody's going to come and rescue you, and nobody is actually ultimately responsible for your well-being. It is your job. However, in saying that, we also have a collegial and a leadership responsibility of care for those in our environment, because it makes such a tremendous difference. The environment that we work in, the people that we work with, have a direct impact on teacher well-being. You know, like in my research, it showed when I did my lit review with the masses of paper, that was one thing I did burn. I burned all my readings at the end of it. That was such a joy. But one of the things that's really, really clear in the research is that when kids are doing well, teacher well-being ratings go up. And that means that the kids then do better. And so teachers feel better. And so this is a virtuous cycle, just continually feeding on itself. Unfortunately, the inverse is also true. So when our students are struggling, and it may be for no fault of our own as teachers, you know, it might be that we've got some kids coming in who have got some big, big things to deal with, and they're not making the gains that we would love to see them make, or they're not reaching the potential we think they could. So we feel bad about ourselves because we think, what else could I do? When we're in that space, that can start to erode our sense of esteem and confidence in ourselves. When that happens, students tend to do worse because we're not confident. We're not in there with lots of enthusiasm and energy because our energy is being drained with this worry, and then they do worse. So we feel worse, and the cycle goes down. Now, in that space, and I know I've been there more than once, you will probably have seen that with your colleagues. When you see somebody in that space, as colleagues, we can recognise that in each other and go, hey, how are you doing? Can I help? We can offer some feedback or some kind words or some encouragement, a resource. We might offer to have the class for the afternoon so somebody can go to a course, whatever it is. But if we recognise that and we say, hey, I've been there before, I know what it's like, and I also know you're going to come out the other side. That even in itself can help. And so that's where, and at the same time, that's where the personal responsibility. So when I start feeling that I'm going on the slippery slope, that's when I have to put on the brakes and change things. So what I used to do for myself was I used to wear deliberately bright clothes, because bright colours make you feel happier and people respond to you happier when you wear bright clothes. I used to put fruit in the staff room, so then I wouldn't eat all the chocolate biscuits because I was going to comfort food to try and solve the problem, and that didn't solve the problem at all. And I would do things deliberately, like I would play more music in my classroom. I would deliberately use more positive language in my classroom to help flip the switch. And so that was about me taking responsibility for how I was showing up, as well as the environment that I was in, manipulating that to the point that it made, and manipulating is probably not the right word, but creating the environment where I could buoy myself up, and that would then enable me to be a better teacher for the kids in my care. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Any comments or questions that anyone else has got at this point? I mean, you might like to think about some things that you might want to raise or ask about, and even just, you know, have a discussion about. So what are some of the influences then on positive teacher wellbeing? And I remember you talked to me that in your research, there were 4 sort of main things that affect.
Yeah. So, you know, aside from the fact that knowing yourself and knowing the basic needs that you need, and this is really important. So I use Te Whare Tapawhā as the working model for whole order that I blended into the wellbeing definition. And for the people that participated, it was about them knowing which parts of those they needed to fix at any time or wanted to address, and what the things were that made the difference for them. Some people like to go for a walk, other people like to run, some people like to play team sports, other people didn't. But some sort of form of activity was great. But knowing for yourself what works for you. And I think that's a really important thing, that we get to know ourselves and address our own, what our needs are. And then aside from that were these 4 things. So the first thing was about people-centered leadership. So people-centered leadership is about having leaders who know us as individuals. I love that wellbeing and teacher wellbeing is becoming, and educator wellbeing is becoming more of a conversation now than what it was when I did this research 7 years ago, or nearly 7 years ago. However, there's a whole lot of programs that are coming out, and I worry about the cookie cutter approach, because some of those programs, the Wellbeing Week, where you have a friend and you have to go and do some people that fills their cup and they love it. Other people, it makes them feel physically sick, and it's another thing to do on their list and they don't want to do it at all. So actually, that isn't increasing the sense of wellbeing for everybody. It's only addressing the needs for some people. In my research, it was really around that, the leaders knowing their people and then giving them what they needed. So one person, it was actually about her boss recognizing that her son was an athlete in the local athletics competition, and he went in and took her class for the afternoon so she could go and see her son perform. And for her, she felt incredibly valued, and she felt like he really cared about her as a person. And that was really good for her. Another person, it was around her boss coming round periodically, and she said it's really weird because they just sort of like pop up more than once a week and just say thank you for what I'm doing. And she was like, I don't really know why they're thanking me, because I'm just doing my job, but it feels really good. And so recognizing what it was, and for that person, it was that her principal came to her individually and not in front of the group. Other people, it was that their board gave them $100 to go and spend on their wellbeing, so they could use it to contribute to a pair of sports shoes, to go and get a massage, or to go and have a lovely meal with a partner. And that for them made them feel valued, because again, they could do it in an individual way. So I think that's one really important piece of the puzzle, and it's about that equity and fear. The next one was about positive supportive relationships, and I've already talked a little bit about this. So, as educators, we have more contact with more people in a day than a doctor does, or a lawyer, or just about any other profession, just about, and it's one-to-ones. So it's intense. We're a relationship heavy role. And so if we have positive relationships, they support us and help us grow. If we don't, they diminish us, and they diminish our sense of well-being. So it's about making sure that we fuel positive relationships with our students, that we create positive relationships where we can with the whānau that we're working with, families, again with our colleagues as well, and that we have our own support network as well that sits outside the school setting that we can lean on, that we can depend on, that will support us. So that's about nurturing those relationships that we have. The third one is about sense of purpose, knowing that what you do is important and it makes a difference. And this is where, when we're sliding down, if our students aren't doing well, we lose our sense of purpose because we think we're not doing it. We're not meeting this, making a difference. But knowing in your heart that every day you turn up and you show up and you connect with your kids, you are making a difference. You just might not see it yet, but you are planting seeds that may bear fruit in time. And finally, it's about self-efficacy. So that's about the can-do-ness. That's about knowing that you are capable and competent. And again, that's the thing that gets the big hit. When our students aren't doing so well, we feel incompetent, we feel useless, and there's no way you're going to thrive when that's a driving feeling. So those are the 4: people-centered leadership, positive supportive relationships, having a strong sense of purpose, and self-efficacy.
Actually, it's really interesting. There's the one that I'm going to talk about actually falls into a couple of those. I can remember once I had a principal who she felt that you should go home after school and that you needed to be at school early the next day to be prepared. Now, I had a personal situation, and as many of you know, I had a child with a learning difficulty, and often children with learning difficulties have trouble in the mornings. They actually can't get organised, and you can often be at school late. So I had this policy that I would actually stay at school late. I would not leave until my classroom was ready to walk into the next morning to turn the light on and to teach, basically. And sometimes it meant that I stayed at school at 5:30 or 6 to achieve that. And I can remember getting into trouble as a fairly new teacher because I wasn't at school early in the morning, and I didn't fit her image of what a teacher should be. And that put a whole lot of stress on me. And yet I know in terms of the work that I did, my workload was probably, I gave many hours and I did the job really well. And that was actually hard. And I think for people in leadership roles to put themselves in other shoes, like what you were talking about with someone with an athletic child and it needs to go after school because they've got sports things, but they do the work, but they do it in their own time. Is there anyone else that's actually felt time pressures like that with other people's expectations of doing it their way? Yeah, interesting, isn't it? And yet, as long as we're doing the job and we're getting the outcomes, sometimes we need to do it our way. Yeah.
I love Brené Brown. I love Brené Brown, full stop.
Yeah.
One of the things she talks about, and I think this is absolutely key, and for me as a leader, it's almost a mantra, is that clarity is kind.
Yeah.
So if we're really, really clear about what the outcomes are that we're expecting, and we have clear conversations, then we have better relationships. So, that might be that, I know for me, people used to say, why do you stay so late? And I'm like, because I don't like getting up in the morning. It wasn't that the only person I had to get up at the time was me. And I'm really reluctant to get out of bed. I'm worse than my 13-year-old son. And so I was far better at actually doing my work in the evening. I'm a night owl. That's how I operate. And as long as the outcome was being met and the expectations were being met, then that was really the big point. But being clear about that is really important, and having those conversations so you know how people work.
Yeah. And I didn't have the confidence at the time as a new teacher to speak up. And so and that affected my self-esteem because I knew that, the principal didn't think highly of me because of that. Interesting. So what are some of the tools then, or the strategies that people can use to support their well-being? She likes this.
All right.
I can tell.
Hold on to your seats, team. So I'm just going to blat out a few. Yeah. So I've already talked about the importance of language. The words that we use to describe our world, to navigate our environment are really, really important. And in my deepest, darkest time, and I went through a really, really rough patch where honestly I thought I'm going to have to hang up my teaching boots because I can't do this anymore. I've lost my mojo. Mm-hmm. One of the first places I went to recover was my language. Things like, I have to go to school. When I shifted that to I get to go to school, it takes the weight and the burden off it. Thinking about the words that we narrate our days with. I'm tired, I'm fed up, I'm stressed, I'm sick of this. The conversations we have in staff rooms. If that's the nature of the conversation in the staff room, and then after that you're supposed to go into your classrooms and engage with your students, it's going to be really, really hard. So we can actually shift the language that we use in conversation. And it's just about being aware of what the language that we're using is and how that's impacting on us. And along with that is emotional literacy. So understanding our own emotional landscape and having tools and strategies to be able to deal with things when they arise. And it's not that our emotions are bad, they're not. Our emotions are simply emotions, they're simply information that's helping us to take action some way or other. And so we often end up judging and berating ourselves when we have a so-called negative emotion, when it's just a feeling. We don't even control our emotions, they just come of their own accord. What we do control, if we're aware of it, is the story we attach to the emotion. So what happens is often, as a little example, I remember one day being in my classroom and it was utter chaos. And I was sitting there and I was on the verge of roaring because honestly, nobody was listening. And then in my head, I heard myself shouting, "Nobody listens to me." And I was about to have a tantrum because nobody was listening to me. I stopped and I went, "Is that actually true?" And it wasn't actually true. When I looked around the classroom, yeah, a good 3/4 of them weren't listening to me, but there was a quarter that were. They were there, they were with me. So I just had to get the others on board. And that took me being aware of the emotional state and then being conscious of the story I was telling myself and being able to put the brakes on so I could shift the story. And often we get just tied up into old loops and we just keep retelling the same old stories over and over again. And what happens is when we retell the story over and over again, we then react and behave in relationship to that story. And 9 times out of 10, those stories aren't actually true. Our brain lies to us all the time. When we have a drink of water, we stop feeling thirsty, right? But we actually don't get hydrated for about 20 minutes. So our brain isn't working on what is really happening right here and right now, because actually, if that were the case, we would feel thirsty for 20 minutes, even after we had our drink. But what the brain does is it goes, last time you had a drink, it meant that after 20 minutes you didn't feel thirsty, so that's good. That's what's happened every other time. So we'll just assume that that's going to happen this time as well. So our brain works on predictions of the world based on the stories we tell ourselves. And some of those we can bring to consciousness if we're aware. That sounds all very airy-fairy out there. A really deep, easy, practical thing that you can do to improve well-being is gratitude. A daily practice of gratitude actually shifts your thinking, and it can shift your physiology. Grateful people tend to be healthier and happier. And gratitude might be about, it might be having an alarm on your phone, and every time that alarm goes off, just looking around and figuring one thing you're grateful for. It might be the blue sky and that you can see. It might be the child who is smiling angelically down there on the mat waiting for you while everybody else is leering around in chaos. It could be the lovely houseplant that you've got sitting in the corner, whatever it is. And you just absorb that gratitude. We used to, we do most of the time, but not as often as we used to, do gratitude at the dinner table every night. So what are you grateful for today? We now have other discussions, our boy's 13, as well. But that was a really good thing. It was a good thing for me, particularly in my dark days, keeping a gratitude journal. You can join online groups where you share your gratitude. There's lots of ways of doing it, but that really helps to shift your thinking to looking for the good. We are hardwired to notice the bad and remember it. We have to work to notice the good and remember it. By practicing gratitude, you're actually shifting your brain physiology, and that's a really important thing to do. Self-compassion is huge. When you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up. You're human. Allow yourself to make mistakes. And especially when you're learning and when you're changing, you're going to make mistakes. Like, our children do it all the time. We expect them to embrace it. We need to do it as well. And be kind to ourselves. And one way to be really kind to yourself is to let go of perfection. Perfection is, it's like, and I think Brené Brown talks about this, it's like lugging a great boulder around with you that actually holds you back from living with joy. Because with perfection, we're always going, this is not quite good enough. There's always something that could be better. Mm-hmm. We don't get to celebrate the good. And it's really important to celebrate the good because that's what you build on. And so learning a couple of other things, learning what energizes you and do more of that. So knowing what brings you joy, and making the deliberate conscious choice to do that. You know, me wearing bright colours energized me, so that's what I did. Some people going out for a run energizes them, so all power to them as they go off and run. Me, I don't run unless I'm being chased by something that's going to eat me. There's nothing in my world that's going to eat me, so there's no need for me to run. That doesn't bring me joy, but it brings other people joy. But find out what it is that brings you joy and do more of it if you can. And then my last one, and like I say, I could go on like this forever, and I'm sorry. But my last one is that your breath is your superpower. I actually used to talk to my children. I used to train my kids in my class with two things. They have two superpowers. One is their breath, and one is their ability to find stillness within themselves. And so that's mindful practices. And you've heard lots about mindful practices, I'm sure. It's about being here and now. And so with your breath, if you can slow your out breath, so you breathe in, say we breathe in, let's try it together now. So if you can breathe in nice and deep if you can, and this is conscious, so this is bringing into your awareness your breath, so breathing in for the count of 4, and then we're going to breathe out for the count of 8. Let's try that. So breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and then out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. When we slow down our out breath, what we're doing is we're sending a signal from the body to the brain. This is polyvagal theory, which is telling our brain that we are safe. When we're safe, our shoulders will drop. When we're safe, our breathing will become more regulated. Our heart rates will drop, and we are more open to learning. When we feel safe, we can listen and we can interpret what we're hearing far better than if we feel unsafe. And safety is the key. And it's the key for our students as well. If they do not feel safe, if they do not feel a sense of belonging in our classrooms, they won't learn. If we don't feel safe and a sense of belonging in our workplaces, we won't thrive there either. And so we can create that in part with our breath, and finding that sense of stillness in ourselves as we go through our day. So I've got a heap of other ideas that I'd love to share with you, but I know that you actually have lives.
Thank you.
So
that's awesome. Now I'm actually going to ask everybody to unmute themselves, and I'm going to ask a question that we can respond to. But I just want to make sure, if you haven't already done so, can you put your name in the chat? There's going to be a book draw for my new book. It'll be a signed copy of my new book coming out in June. And you can do that. So we're going to everyone to unmute themselves all at once, and I'm going to ask you, when you heard about the topic today, that it was going to be on teacher wellbeing, what made you say, I'm going to go to that this afternoon? And has what you came for been covered? If not, ask the question. Okay, so everybody unmute themselves. We're going to hear from everybody. Why did you decide to come today? Has the reason that you came been answered? And if not, give a question. Okay, Tracy, you were first. I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Jenny. When I saw your email and I read through it, and I heard that Meg was coming on, and I had met Meg previously when I did Losslyn to Karen Tui Boys doing a little presentation. I thought she has got so much to say, and I thought I highly valued her input into that. So, and I, after having a very difficult term, I suppose, and concern about wellbeing as well, and I thought it was just very, very timely. So thank you very much, Meg. Yeah, much
nice to see you again.
Thank you.
That's great. And you feel that you've got what you came for?
Yeah, lots of ideas and thoughts, and realise that yes, I've got, I am, doing my best to look after myself as well.
Great.
Yeah.
And I'll be checking up with you too and seeing how you're going with those things.
Yeah.
Thank
you very much.
Bernie, you're next to her, so you get to go next.
Very similar to Tracy. We've taken on some new ideas, a new initiative this year, and it's been hard work, and we don't feel we've had the support we really were expecting. and we're worn out every day, exhausted every day. Just things like if we, we're going to have a full-time teacher aide to help us, and if they're away, then nobody comes, and things like this. By the end of the day, you're absolutely stuffed, there is still some, there is the good things. Like I do try and look for the good things in class, the kids that are doing what they should be. And, and there is, like you say, Meg, there's lots of good things in class, So I am thankful for that, and I do let those kids know that quite regularly, and even the ones that I sort of need to turn around a little bit, I, think about their positive things, and I do, give them lots of praise and things like that. So I think, that does work, definitely. The breathing thing, I don't know if I've got time, but I'll make time. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, the only thing I do
teach your kids with that.
Yeah, I could teach my whole class that. But the trouble is, I have a lot of kids that just laugh all day, and so I don't know if they'd actually be serious enough to do it. But the breathing thing does definitely help when I'm not at school, because I go to yoga and for an hour every Sunday, and the world stops for an hour, and it's brilliant. Sometimes I even go to sleep, but it is brilliant, because I stop everything thinking. And it's hard to stop thinking as a teacher, and it's brilliant for me. So yeah.
I used to keep an alarm on my phone, and it had breathe on it. And it seems silly, but it was whenever that went on, I'd actually stop and do one mindful breath. That was all I had to do at that. And another thing I did with my class was every time a bell rang, that was our cue to stop, and we would notice 3 things that we could hear, 2 things that we could see, 1 thing that we could feel, then we would breathe, then we would leave. And that was quite helpful. I had a particularly rowdy class, and that certainly made a difference to the scramble for the door and the noise and the chaos at that time with that group of students.
Good suggestions, yeah. Except at the moment our bells aren't working, so I can't even hear the bell. But when they start working next term, I'm hoping that's a good idea. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, Jenny, let's hear from you.
Yeah. So why did I come on this? Because well-being's a big thing that's being talked about by many people. And I'm a teaching principal in a small rural school. So there's myself and another teacher. So our well-being is very important to me, to make sure that, my teachers looked after. But it's looking after of myself. Like you, Jenny, you just do things and you keep on doing things. But thank you, Meg. There are many little pieces that you've talked about today that I can take home with me now and then come back tomorrow morning and put them into practice in the classroom, and stimulate the children to also slowing down and looking at their own well-being, their anxieties and all sorts. And I love the breathing one. It's really hard to breathe out for 8 seconds. So thank you.
It is.
Start with 6 and work your way up.
Yeah.
Yes. Great. Thank you, Jenny. And Celine, I know that you came on late, but the question was, why did you decide I've got to join today? And has what you came on to join, did you hear it? And do you have a question if not?
Sorry for just being able to come on like 10 minutes ago. I finish work at 4 o'clock, sometimes a little bit later. But I work in early childhood, and like everyone here, it's quite a very stressful and busy environment. Yeah. So imagine nonstop crying in your ear the whole day, not from one, but many, many children. So I think that's my main reason for wanting to listen and hear and possibly watch what I've missed, because well-being is very important. It's about being joyful about what I do as a teacher, as an educator, and knowing my purpose for why I do what I do. And I guess if I've lost track of that, if I no longer find joy in what I do, there's no point, isn't it? It's like it's such an effort, and it's difficult to show up So one of the things that I actually can connect with that was suggested was about the gratitude, finding something that you're thankful for. I wish I heard this talk when we were new here in New Zealand, when everything was so new to me, and I had to really I had to do so much adjustment in my way of thinking and doing. But one of the things that kept me going was our family practiced an affirmation circle. So there was no time during my day in my early childhood work to stop, because everything is just go 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 from beginning to end. But when I get home, my husband and my children and I, during dinner time, we have an affirmation circle where we affirm one specific thing that we appreciate, and we can highlight about each person, and that just brings out a sense of like, oh, I didn't notice that you actually saw that good thing that I've done, or that good attribute of mine, and that's very affirming. So that kind of kept my spirits up, and affirmed that I was on the right track in what I was doing. So yeah, thank you for all those suggestions, especially the breathing one, and also finding joy and gratitude, and even the little things. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you
Little
for
things make
them.
a big difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, is there anyone on Deb's email? We've got a nice picture of the ceiling now. Deb's new iPad. There they are. Hi, Debs. Let's hear from you next. Oh, look, they're all there. Who wants to go first?
Who wants to go first?
Yes, I'll go. I came on here because I really enjoy my job, and I want to continue enjoying my job, and I think about having work-life balance is the way to do that. And I really liked that idea about how work-life balance has got to work for you. It's okay if it looks a little bit different from someone else.
That's a very
What,
good point.
yeah. Have I missed something?
One takeaway, maybe? Any takeaways?
Oh, just about how, yeah, about finding the well-being that works for you.
Mm.
Yes. Mm,
I've been
excellent.
really into boxing, yeah, and I found that's great.
That is great. Some of my students like that one too.
Yeah.
I'll have a go next if you like.
Okay, great.
I'm not like a midlife or midterm teacher. I'm actually near the end of my run. And I can identify with a lot of the issues that you raised about not feeling good enough, about overloading yourself, not being able to say no. I have been in a situation where I was I might have been burned out. If I wasn't, I certainly was extremely close to it several years ago. And about the little things that you can do. I like what Jenny said about doing three things a day for yourself that are going to be good for you. And I liked also about what Meg said about the reframing the story in your mind so that you're making yourself and your class and your surroundings a healthier place for all of you.
Thank you. Great. Isn't it interesting how everyone takes something different?
Yeah.
You're next, Tim.
I'm Sarah. I came on this talk because I was told that I should.
That's an honest answer.
And my class is right next door, so it seemed really easy. I do lots of those things anyway. Like I've got a little diary and I write one thing that is good from my day, and it does make a difference on your perspective. And yeah, I like the whole talk. The breathing is really good for us, but it's also really good for our class today. Like for today in class, for example, they hadn't quite settled after a bell time, and I was getting frustrated. There were lots of little conversations going, so I just completely cut my sentence off and just said to everybody, "Haki roto," and everybody breathed in. "Haki waho," everybody breathed out. We did it 2 times, and then they were so quiet, and we just could keep going, and everyone felt better. So it's amazing how turning something into Te Reo Māori makes it much more accessible for the kids. Yeah, but they loved it. So, and if the breathing works for them, then it definitely works for us. And why shouldn't we be modelling looking after ourselves? Because that is good for our students as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad that it was easy for you to come on and that it wasn't far from next door, because even what you just shared was your own gem of wisdom.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually,
Sure,
Jenny, can
that's
I
all.
just say there's a wee tool that you can use where you can say, you know how we often do the for attention?
no.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we don't do it, but we do it. Well, people do it. A lovely one that I read about, and it works beautifully, is to say to students, when you can hear my voice, please take a nice, deep, mindful breath. And then you repeat it 2 or 3 times. And by the time you've got to the 3rd time, everybody is quiet because they're focusing on their breath. Or most people are. And for the ones that aren't, then you can capture them relatively easily. But that's that, bringing that hakeroto into a quiet, settled way to actually settle your class, rather than something that's aggressive with a big loud clap or a big shout.
Great. Excellent.
That's
Is there
all from
anyone
us.
else who'd like to share? Anyone else that hasn't had a chance to speak? Okay, Meg, I'm going to ask you, please, to pick a number between 1 and 17.
9.
Number 9. Let's see how this goes. So I'm at the top. 1. Oops, hang on.
Drum
One,
roll.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is Jan. Excellent, Jan. You can actually see me. I think I heard the roar from the room next door. So that means that Jan is in the same building as me. So Jan, before I leave today or tomorrow, please let me know, because I need your details so I can sign your book. And you will be getting the 2nd copy of the press, which is expected in June. And my new book is called The Making of a Wobbly Kid. And I'm the making of the Wobbly Kid. And you'll know that I did the school version first, the parent version second, and now I want to share with you a journey, and also what it's like to have neurodiversity and to use that neurodiversity. I actually don't like the word superpower, but to actually use your strengths and live your strengths. And so I want to share that with others that I work with. So fantastic. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you all. You've actually we're focusing this year on an hour of power. And I think an hour of power is just the right time to dwell on something and then move on to the next thing. So have a great evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you next term. The recording will be in the Dropbox by tomorrow, and I sent out the link for that last night. Feel free to share it widely. Have a great holiday break, and we'll see you next term. And thank you so much, Meg, for your input today and just sharing this with us. It's been great to have you here. And Meg,
Thank you so much.
final note, have you got anything to share with us? If anyone wants to do something else with you, what might they be able to access?
So if you go onto my website, it's a bit of a mess because I'm in the midst of rebranding, but I'll stick around in there. I work as a coach, so I'm coaching teachers and principals and school leaders. I'm also working with schools around curriculum development, so localising their curriculum. And I have a big passion for teaching and learning with the heart and brain and mind. So that's wellbeing. That's about in our classrooms using neuroscience, psychology to enhance our teaching practice so that all of our children have access to be able to learn from us. And so, and I am in the throes of writing my first book about that as well at the moment. So I won't promise to have it published though, so I'm not going to ask if anybody wants to.
I'll keep you on to it. Great. All right. Thank you so much. And we will go and look at your website and fossick around, as you say, and I'll look forward to working with you again.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Ka kite anō.